Hi again, everyone. I'm olliemathews. This is Societal Narcissism. This video is sponsored by contribution from Chris. Chris sent in a audio file that he wants me to review. It's about 44 minutes long, so this is going to be a longer video, and it is titled, What Pisses Me Off About Baby Boomers? And this is a Canadian philosopher, I haven't heard it, but it appears to be a Canadian philosopher arguing with baby boomers. If I got the gist of it right, so let's just get right into it, shall we?
I was born in 1951, and that entitles me to the boomer label, I am told. I am mystified as to why you speak so scathingly about this demographic. Could you expand on this for me, just so I understand the bias for my own future reference when it comes at me personally? I bring this up because, like many free thinkers, I do not own what others assume about me, and it might be fun to talk with you as a voice from outside the categories and statistics which you may or may not be referring to. I am also aware that your childhood traumas come from a mother who is probably a boomer, so that explains the emotions I hear in your voice when you blame the boomers for most of the ills of the world. For this, I have compassion. You are free to ask me anything about my childhood, my birthing and raising of my children, my marriage, my postmenopausal reality, my livelihoods, my political, spiritual, philosophical views.
So it's a boomer asking this Gen Xer what his problem is with boomers, and it's a boomer. It's obviously a boomer mother, a boomer female.
Views. Perhaps you would agree that I am not really worthy of the boomer label, except for my age, which I can do nothing about, nor do I feel ashamed of. A conversation about...
And again, it's not all boomers. It's the saying, it's all boomers. If you don't put off the behaviors I'm talking about, then I'm not talking to you. Then you shouldn't be, if you're a boomer and you don't do the things I'm talking about, then you shouldn't be offended by what I'm saying.
About being old might be helpful for you too. That's from Teresa.
Hey Teresa, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. I appreciate the question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take you to task because you asked me to. All
well,
right.
I do want to hear it, and
Sure.
I don't really want an argument. I'd just like to have a conversation with you about it.
I don't think you do. I don't think you, based upon what you wrote to me, because first of all, you don't bring up any of my arguments. Secondly, you call my perspective scathing and a bias.
Right. Yeah.
But you haven't actually told me where I'm wrong. You've just used negative language to characterize my arguments, right?
Which is a typical boomer tactic. They just attack you, put you on the defensive, because they're used to talking to everybody as if they're everybody, the world's parents. Remember, they love that high horse.
Okay.
And this cheap psychologizing of my mom, and that's why I get angry at boomers, that's not an argument. You understand?
Oh no, I'm just describing what I'm hearing when you speak about your past. I hear a lot of pain and trauma, and yeah, I mean, I've listened to enough of your conversations that I'm very aware that you had a really shitty childhood. And
I did, but my mother's not a boomer.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay, so again, an assumption that the boomer is wrong about.
She's born, I mean, it depends where you I generally think of it as the post-war period, like sort of 1946 onwards, although some people put it a little bit earlier. But my mom was a decade almost before that, so she's definitely not a boomer. And I never think of her in that category. I mean, to me, the boomers generally come from countries not smashed up by the Second World War. I don't think of East Germans particularly as boomers. I think of it to a large degree as a North American phenomenon, although I know that demographically that's not entirely correct. But
no, it's not. I don't agree with that. Boomers are worldwide. They're worldwide. I mean, a boomer is a boomer, whether you're American, Canadian, Mexican, European, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. South American, Australian, it doesn't matter. A boomer is a boomer.
Right. And did she grow up in Ireland?
No, she grew up in Germany.
Germany, okay. Okay, and what happened to your dad?
When?
Well,
I mean, that's a big, he's an old guy now, right? So I'm just trying to narrow it down to what you mean.
okay, well, he wasn't present for raising you?
No, he left, I think I was about 6 months old. So he left before I knew he was there.
Yeah, okay.
So he's raised by a single mother.
Good. I was just wondering about that. I was actually looking on Wikipedia to see if I could find out some facts about you, but nobody's talking about that. So thanks for
No,
clarifying.
of course not.
Okay.
So
thanks.
now, why would you be bothered if I speak scathingly of boomer characteristics that you do not possess? Why would you be bothered?
That was that's what I just said. Why would you be bothered if you're a boomer and you watch my channel and you watch channels like mine or people who talk about boomers, and you don't display the characteristics we're talking about? Why would you be offended?
Because obviously I've never said all boomers are X or this allows. This is a generalization.
Right.
It's like if I say, Chinese people tend to be short, and you're a Chinese person, I don't think you'd be offended, would you?
No, I'm not offended. Like I said, I'm a free thinker, and I don't just own what other people say about some age set. It's an age set, really. It's just a demographic age set, right? So
yeah, I get this all the time when I say that atheists tend to be leftists, and so I'm not a leftist and I'm an atheist. It's like, well, then clearly I'm not talking about you, so why?
Right. There are no absolutes in anything. There's exceptions to everything. What you're talking about is generalizations, is majorities and overwhelming majorities of these things.
You bringing this up? I mean, it's it's emotional.
I do have some thoughts though about the demographic, if we can talk about generalizations.
We can in a sec, but I'm just curious. I mean, how long have you been listening to this show?
I think I first heard you speak on Alex Jones way back in maybe 2008 or something, and
Whoa. All right.
That kind of piqued my interest, and then I started.
When I was a little heavier, and he wasn't. But all right, yeah, go on.
Oh yeah, but it was just listening. I didn't see you. I didn't see what you looked like, so got no judgments about that. In fact, I just listened to the podcast. I really aren't that interested in watching the YouTube. It takes up too much bandwidth. I live in a rural area, so bandwidth is an issue, by the way. So
I mean, off and on, let's say a decade or so since we first came into contact, and I this is not specifically directed at you, although you are manifesting it a little bit here, Teresa, but I find this kind of baffling. Because, people will post on my videos or will get messages or whatever, and they say, Steph, I'm a big fan,
right,
but you're an idiot. Or, Steph, I'm a big fan, but blah, 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 and no argument. And so I find it, I try not to get dispirited by this kind of stuff, Teresa, but sometimes it's a little tricky because if people are fans, they should be making arguments. So if you have an issue with stuff I say about the boomers, then you should make an argument, right? So you should find something that I've said, and you should find where my reasoning is incorrect or my data is incorrect or whatever. You shouldn't just say, well, Steph, you're scathing, and it's a bias, and it's mommy issues. Those aren't arguments. And that's why it's kind of dispiriting when I hear, oh, you've been listening for
Right, those are attacks. I have no problem if you have an alternate opinion and you can back it up. Tell me what it is.
11 years. It's like, Steph, I'm a big fan. It's like, well, if you're a big fan, can't you make an argument? Because that's kind of what I'm all about. I don't want fans. I want people who can make arguments. And I'm just kind of curious as to why. Did you know that you weren't making any arguments here or what?
Actually, my original communication to Mike about being on the show, I was responding to a question that you made in, when you found out about Weinstein, the sexual allegations and the casting couch issues. And you said, how
I think she's talking about Harvey Weinstein.
can we enjoy watching movies? What do we do? How can we watch knowing what we know? And, I tend to talk back when I'm listening to you. And I thought it would be really fun to just be able to talk to you about the really fabulous movies out there that, I don't watch the new ones as much. So it would be fun to talk about, the really great movies that I find useful to actually watch a few times, to have as sort of the classic library. So that was my.
But Teresa, what you hang on. What you emailed to my producer doesn't have any relevance to this conversation.
Yeah, I know.
So my question is, I'm going to ask it again because I have great respect for women. I'm going to ask it again. Did you know you weren't making any arguments? But we're being a little bit insulted, right? Saying that I have bias and I'm scathing and it's mommy issues, right? Those are kind of a way of diminishing my
passive aggressiveness. I mean, and again, it sounds like this woman has no arguments. She just wants them to stop.
My arguments without actually rebutting them.
Okay, I'm up for it. I am. I'm up for it.
Okay, so did you know you weren't making any arguments when you sent in a somewhat insulting message?
Well, I didn't feel like I was insulting you. I don't mean to insult you, but if I did insult you, I'm sorry for that. But here's the thing is, I've got a little thing that I got off of a really great thing off Zero Hedge. It was like all the commenters. Sometimes I get some really good comments, and this one came up yesterday when I was, expecting to be on your show. And this guy said, "The generation, quote unquote, is the most useless idea in journalism. There is no common origin or common experience. No one can choose to join it or leave it. No one supposedly in it has any responsibility for it or authority over it. It's a catch-all excuse for the prejudices of those who prescribe to it." I thought that was very succinct, actually. I don't find it useful to throw around terms like boomers, because it's so general, and it's really ignoring.
It's not general. It really isn't. It's not. You just don't like that you're part of a generation that's primarily responsible for destroying the world.
It's ignoring a lot, especially if you're into a blaming mode about a whole demographic. Not only a whole demographic, but the biggest demographic, right? So it's a big generalization. And if I'm allowed to, express the other side of it, I would say that the boomer generation has done a whole lot of good things for society in general.
For themselves, not for society. For themselves they have, not for society. They've destroyed society.
And we can go through that, but
yeah, let's hear the good things.
All right, okay. I would say that
let's just start with one, because if you just give me a laundry list.
There's a huge move towards holistic health, which came when I was a young adult. I was kind of swimming around in that because everybody else was, and just exploring, the poisons that are added to food and going for organic and using herbal treatments and more natural treatments rather than going big pharma.
Great. We destroyed the housing market. We destroyed the currency. We destroyed the culture. Okay, but here's some here's some supplements for you as you live out of your car that you can't pay the insurance or gas for. Oh, great, awesome.
Sorry to interrupt. Would you say that the move towards holistic health, I'm not sure what that means, but would you say that that's a general boomer phenomenon? Because what I see is boomers accepting and defending the FDA, which allows for unbelievable poisons and terrible things, and also for good medicine to be withheld from the public. I see the boomers fairly willing to have their children drugged. I see the boomers sitting over the DSM-4 or DSM-3, I guess.
Right. It was the boomer generation that was shoving Adderall, shoving Ritalin down their kids' throats because they didn't want to deal with them. They couldn't deal with their kids being kids. They ran towards the pharmaceuticals. Okay? So they had an out for their kid being quote-unquote hyperactive when it's a kid being kid. Oh, here's some Ritalin. Here's some Adderall. Here's some Prozac. They're the ones who really lit the fuse for the SSRIs. It was the boomers. That's a boomer thing.
And then 4, and then 5, not raising much of a stink about things like the quackery of psychiatry and so on. I'm just trying to think what kind of general phenomenon this is. And of course, I also see the boomers presiding over the creation of socialized healthcare, in which doctors are paid for writing prescriptions rather than preventing disease.
Yep.
And so, like, if you have a healthcare system based upon insurance, then the insurance company wants to keep you healthy, so they'll take steps to keep you healthy and prevent you from getting ill. But if you have socialized healthcare, and by that I include a lot of, more than half the money spent in the healthcare in the states is the government's. So then you have a system wherein the doctors profit from you being ill, and they profit from treating you with pills rather than getting involved in your lifestyle. And so I'm not sure how I would look at the boomers who presided over this terrifying reversal of cause and effect in the healthcare system, where doctors make money throwing pharmaceuticals at you rather than either preventing you from getting ill or dealing with things in a more detailed manner, combined with the massive drugging of children.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fast forward to today, where now there's this thing. Look, I'm fat, I'm unhealthy because I eat like shit and I haven't been taking care of myself. But now there's this push for this drug Ozempic that instead of dieting, Okay, dieting the right way. People are taking pills that kills your appetite so they can lose weight, quick and fast, instead of not changing your lifestyles, okay? Just relying on a pharmaceutical so you could still live like shit.
Children, I'm not sure where I see, as a whole, this big holistic health approach.
Well, okay, so the boomers, I hate using that term. Let's just talk about the demographic, okay? And we sort of agree on the dates, right?
No, we're going to use the term boomers whether you like it or not, because that is the correct term for the post. Like, this is one of the few times in history where there was very little, this is one of the few times in history where there's very little blending.
Right. She don't want to use the term because she's in the forgive and forget mode. That's in the past. No. You have to get it down to brass tacks. You have to drill down to what the root cause is, what the problem is. And they are the root cause to so many issues in society. And again, not all boomers, a majority of boomers.
When it comes to generations, because guys were away for war, they came back and they all had like 5 kids apiece, like in a couple of years. So there is a massive demographic boom. And so it is one of the few times in history where you can really characterize people by a generation, because it is one of the few most clearly and most sharply defined generations in human history.
Yes. Okay. So I'll use the word. I just don't like the word because I think that it's misunderstood and it gets a bad rap.
Why? What's misunderstood? You just don't like it. The boomer just doesn't like to be called out. They just don't like to be called out. They hate it because they've lived for decades, for 6-7 decades, okay, being able to do what they want to do, everything about them. They get it all. You get nothing. Rules for thee, not for me.
I think the whole demographic got duped. I think we got predated upon by the social engineers and the marketeers. And it started right with, diapers and bottles and all the stuff that they figured they could sell to the mothers of the baby boom. And it just went everything that this demographic was going through.
What, diapers? Like, what? Diapers is a scam? Like, what is a kid supposed to do? And bottles? Like, what? What?
From childhood to teenagehood to adulthood, being a parent, and etc. all the way along, they were predated upon by the people that could make a ton of money selling things to them, and also.
Are you saying that this was unique to the boomers?
I think it really stepped up because the thing is that.
What? There were no diapers or bottles before the baby boomers? Like, what is she talking about? This is the absurdity. They just resent their children for needing. Yeah, they had children. They got all the narcissistic supply from being pregnant and all that attention. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I gotta buy this because the kid doesn't know how to. Is not gonna know how to use the toilet for 2 years. Isn't going to be able to drink. Has to drink out of a bottle for a year or two, and that's all expense. Just like they resent their own children for being children. And they think they're special. Like, diapers and bottles weren't invented during the baby boomer generation. That's insane.
You could really access a lot of people all at once by targeting your advertising to just that one demographic.
Hang on. Are you saying that the boomers, are you saying that the people who wanted to prey on others just magically appeared during the boomer phase and weren't around before or since in human history? Every generation has to deal with the elders who want to prey on them, don't they?
No, I'm not saying that at all. Those
So what are you saying?
Businessmen and political political idealists, and the communists and everybody else that's been trying to engineer the society. Going back to eugenics and the whole, you can go right back to a lot of the programs to mind.
Okay, sorry.
But how did we get on eugenics? Like, I agree about communism and eugenics and all that, but this started off just like talking about these businessmen pushing bottles and diapers, and somehow she can kind of link that to eugenics. That's insane.
On a bit of a ramble fest here. Do you think that from a younger generation standpoint, Teresa, do you think that when the boomers complain about being preyed upon, when they have dumped an unbelievable amount of national debt on the next generation, do you think that the boomers playing victim comes across as particularly credible?
silence.
Well, we are victims when we have no power to change things. So I think as children, yeah.
Oh my God, could you imagine a boomer has no power? Like, the boomers have had power for 50 years now. Holy shit. We have no power to change things. You changed everything. The boomers changed everything.
Yes, we were victims.
You had the boomers had no power to change things?
Not when they're children, no.
No, of course not when they're children. But I'm not complaining.
Wait a minute, children? Or the children were buying their own diaper? Like what? The children were demanding diapers and bottles and like... She just doesn't want to take responsibility for the majority of her generation. She has no arguments whatsoever. This woman is as he says, is a ramble fest. She don't know what she's talking about.
About boomers when they were 5. I never have, right? I'm talking about adults.
Okay, I know that my personal
What generation, what 5-year-old has the power to change anything? I mean, in society. Well, maybe now that at 5 you can choose your own... We'll leave it there, you know what I'm talking about.
experience isn't an argument, but I have lived in rural areas for most of my life, and my picture of my demographic is quite different than what's going on in the cities. And I never was involved with the state. I tried very hard to just live under the radar. I was maybe what you might understand as being a member of a counterculture. I mean, I basically went.
You went off the grid.
Raised my kids in the bush. I was very.
Yeah, hang on. So you went off the grid.
I did. I went off the grid for many years. I homeschooled my kids. I gave birth at home. I raised my kids with.
No, and that's great. No, and
natural healing.
Hang on a second.
So.
Like I appreciate that. I think your kids probably did very well out of that, certainly compared to what would have gone on in government schools. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
I mean, good for you.
Yeah.
But you didn't.
And they
fight.
got raised with.
No, you didn't fight. You weren't out there fighting. You say, oh well, we were helpless to fight, but you weren't off the grid. You didn't fight. I mean, I could have gone off the grid, but I'm here fighting.
Well, I fought in my own way.
Then how did you fight?
Oh,
See, I kind of disagree with him there. Going off the grid is like to me, that's sort of balkanizing. You don't like what's going on. You're going to raise your own kids your own way. I kind of respect that. I mean, I got to give a little bit of credit's due. I don't necessarily agree with that fully, that you're not fighting. By saying, I am not going to comply with this. I am not going to participate in this. I'm going to go live off the grid. To me, that is kind of fighting back. So it's a bit of a disagreement there with the host.
Got it from every angle, especially when I was raising kids. You know how homeschoolers get picked on?
No, I don't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and natural childbirth, choosing to have babies at home. I got...
No, but I mean, how did you... First of all, hang on.
I fought for my individuality every
No, not for...
Yeah, but what she doesn't realize, the people, why she went off the grid, the people ostracizing her about homeschooling and about, natural childbirth, I think that's what she said, were other boomers. See, that's the connection she's not making.
What? This is the boomer thing, not for what you wanted. What did you fight for in society? Oh, well, I fought for what I wanted, but that's the whole problem with you're kind of manifesting the entire criticism.
And he's got a point. And he's got a point there. So if you're talking on a societal level, yeah, she's doing it personally for her children, but not for society. He's got a point.
Did you fight for what you wanted?
I mean, I could see both of their points on that issue.
Wanted to homeschool your kids. You fought for that. Good for you. I'm not complaining. You wanted to have your kids at home. You fought for that. Good for you. So you fought for what you wanted. My question is, what did you fight for the next generation outside of your own family?
Right.
I raised 3 really great kids.
Outside of your own family.
They are the next generation, and they are.
So it's their job to fight now.
And I did what I could where I was.
What?
I was in a rural area. I was never ever up for getting up and taking to the streets or starting a podcast. I did it in my own way.
What did you
and
do?
What did I do?
You're saying you fought, but what did you fight for?
I fought for. What did I fight for? Well, individuation.
Which you wanted. I'm talking about society as a whole.
Self-realization.
Oh, that's what you wanted. That's good for you, and good for you that you did it. But what did you do?
It's all. Yeah, he's right. It's all. Everything she fought for was for herself, Everything she fought for was for the betterment of her, not society.
Idea as a whole.
I'm not a collectivist. I feel
No. Fighting against collectivism doesn't make you a collectivist. Come on.
What's that?
Fighting against collectivism doesn't make you a collectivist. What did you do outside of your own family?
Okay. Well, if you want to hear what I think I did outside my own family, I could go into it in detail. But
just give me the big picture. So I could explain what I'm doing in 30 seconds. So just tell me what you did and what you're doing.
Right. Okay. Well, I went for my own integrity. I went to learn how to act from a true place. A true place.
So it's all about you.
Well, of course it's all about me.
Nah, that's
well, there it is. Of course it's all about me. Yeah, he's right. Everything she does, she thinks because she did for herself and her family, somehow this benefits, society as a whole. And he's not talking about individualism. He's talking about the boomers' negative effect on society as a whole. And she's basically proving his point.
Boomer thing. It's all about you.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's you're exactly. This is now I understand why you're sensitive to my criticism of the boomers. Because you're manifesting all the worst qualities I've criticized. It's all about you.
Okay.
You want to be individuated. You want to be authentic. You want to do this. You want to do that. And the next generation can pick up the bill.
Was Carl Jung a boomer then? Because he was talking about individuation and self-realization all through his life.
Wait, are you comparing yourself to Carl Jung? That's the plan here?
I'm just saying, it's not just a boomer thing to want to become...
No. Come on. You want to start talking about Carl Jung? Well, pluses and minuses. But Carl Jung was a psychologist, a therapist. He worked with Freud. He wrote huge numbers of books. He tried to educate people. He was a teacher. I mean, he did things for his society more than just, I want to have my kids at home and homeschool them and be like, are you going to put yourself in the category of Carl Jung? Fine. Then you have to have written a whole bunch of books, educated a whole bunch of people, suffered a whole bunch of slings and arrows getting out there fighting for truth in the world.
Okay, I'm 66 years old. I've done a hell of a lot.
I'm still waiting for you to tell me one damn thing.
All right. I've painted a lot of pictures. I've written books. I have made a living and managed to raise children without going bankrupt or going on welfare. That's a big accomplishment right there, actually. I have.
So your contribution to the world is not going on welfare and painting pictures?
Exactly.
I offered actually to Mike. I offered for you to see a movie that was made about me, so that you could maybe get a better.
I'm glad that you painted pictures, Teresa. I really am. I think it's wonderful.
Well, you're asking me what I did.
But how did that fight the growth of the state?
Exactly.
How did that fight the growth of the state?
I didn't give them any of my power.
See, that's all about you.
Well, that's.
What did you do to fight the size and power and growth of the state?
Well, and so what you're doing is like give me a hint here. What are
see, look, Teresa, you know and I know and everybody listening to this knows that you didn't. And listen, I don't even mind that. I don't even like if you lived a life for yourself and you didn't want to get involved in fighting the size and power of the state. If you wanted to live a life where you painted and you wrote and you raised your kids and you homeschooled and so on, that's fine. Listen, I'm not saying, that makes you a terrible person or anything like that.
Right.
But it does mean that you did nothing to fight the mess, which my generation now has to claw and bite and fight at great personal risk to try.
Right. Just because you didn't actively participate in the destruction of society, you didn't do anything to stop it. You kind of just withdrew, went into like some rural community away off the grid as the rest of your generation ran roughshod through society.
In reverse. You did not push back against the growing cancer of state power. And many of your generation, not yourself particularly because you were more off the grid and so on, but many of your generation greedily sucked at the teat of state power, grabbed everything they conceivably could, and were more than willing to indebt the next generation for their pensions and their retirement and their health care and their benefits and the welfare so they didn't have to give money to charity as much.
Not even the next generation, the next 3 to 4 generations. They screwed over Gen X, the millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, the Zoomers. I mean, what, you got 5 generations in there? And they're still going, holding on the power. I went off the grid, so therefore I don't count. Well, you may not have actively participated, But you did nothing to stop it.
And left a massive bill. State power, environmental degradation, massive entrenched bureaucracy, huge national debts, staggeringly enormous, over $200 trillion in America of unfunded liabilities. That came out of the boomer generation primarily.
Yep. I didn't do that, though.
I didn't say you did. My question is...
But you...
I didn't do it. But most of your generation did. See, just because you didn't actively participate in it doesn't mean that people like me and this person can't criticize the generation as a whole. We're not talking about every single boomer. And if you didn't do the things we're talking about, you really shouldn't be getting that offended over it.
You did say I was a boomer because I cared for myself.
What did you do to stop it?
I created an alternative.
For who?
You understand that's very weak sauce there, right?
No, I don't think it's weak at all.
Okay, what did you do? Tell me what you did.
Pardon me?
Tell me what you did. I don't know what creative and alternative means. What does that mean?
She created an alternative for herself, and that's fine. You did what you thought was best for yourself, but for society as a whole, the rest of society fell apart over the last 5 decades that they've been in power. It's just a fact.
I do not live like a statistically typical boomer. I created an alternative.
For herself.
I use money as little as possible. As little as possible. I trade as much as I can. I barter. Okay,
because you don't act like a typical boomer. But what did you do to call out the rest of these boomers who were not doing what you're doing? Nothing. That's fine. You went into self-preservation mode. But as far as society goes, what the rest of your generation did, they ran roughshod, man. They destroyed the next 5 generations' futures. There's nothing left. Social Security is gone. By the time it's time for Gen X to start collecting Social Security, it's going to be completely insolvent and collapse. It's gone.
Buy things from neighbors and trade things.
Okay, so you feel that the military-industrial complex is somehow going to be brought down by the fact that you trade lawn mowing for eggs?
It's going to bring itself down, Stefan.
I buy raw milk, so therefore, that was my fight against being in a war in the Middle East for the last 25 to 30 years. Like this is the mentality. It's all me. But we're talking about the collective. We're talking about all as a whole.
I'm not going to take that cross and bear it. There is no way.
So you don't have to lift a finger. It's going to crash, and the next generation or two is going to have to deal with it because you didn't want to do much about it.
Well, you know what? There's another quote I have here that this really famous guy says, "Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times."
Great. Boomers love their platitudes. They love their slogans and sayings. Okay. But you know where they tell you say them from? They say them from their high horse.
And so the cycle of history continues.
And what does that mean? I don't know.
But who created the weak men? Which generation had the good times and then created the weak men? The baby boomers. Much like these Christian Bible thumpers, you got to use their own arguments against them. That's easy. Who created the weak men that we're dealing with today? The baby boomers. Sorry. Is it every baby boomer parent that created? No, but as a whole, that's what happened.
I have no idea what that's to do with what we're talking about.
There's only one way you can attack this kind of beast. And that is just disengage and create an alternative way of being. And that's what I did, and that's what I've been doing.
Oh, I see. So the only way to win the battle is to run away.
No, I'm not running away. I'm disengaging.
Okay, potato. So somehow...
So you're just not dealing with the battle whatsoever. You disengage, and whatever happens, happens. But then you don't like, because you're part of that generation that destroyed everything, you don't like that. Not our problem. Like, sorry. Like, I'm glad she didn't actively participate in destroying the culture and destroying society and destroying the economy and propping the military industrial complex and propping the pharmaceuticals, but she did nothing to stop it.
If you run away and you don't spend a lot of time convinced, if running away is a good thing, how many other people did you convince to run away, and how hard did you work at trying to do that?
I didn't run away.
Okay, how many other people, Teresa? And listen, I appreciate you being in this conversation. I'm glad to have a chance to test my thesis.
Yeah.
But if disengaging is the way to fight the power, then how hard did you work to try and get other people to disengage? How many relationships did you put on the line? How many letters to the editor did the write? How much did you publish? How many people did you fund? How hard did you work to try and get other people to disengage? Or is disengaging something that you preferred to do and now you're calling it some sort of moral crusade?
Do you want numbers? Because I can't keep track of how many letters to the editors of various newspapers I wrote over the years.
You can't give an approximation?
Many.
And how many were published?
What's that?
And how many were published?
How many were published? Oh, probably over a dozen.
All right.
And I actually did, come to think of it, the little town out on the west coast that I lived in was being threatened by a mega development, and it was a little heritage town, and nobody wanted it. And I had a big part to play in the defeat of that.
Well, you used the power of the state to prevent people from building stuff? This is your big contribution to preventing the size of the power of the state from growing?
No, I wrote letters to the editor. I talked to people just like you do. And people rose up en masse.
And how did they prevent this from actually happening?
So you prevented homes and development of areas where people could live. Now that there's a housing shortage, you've been using the power of the state. Like, she don't realize what, see, she wanted to keep the area the way she wanted it kept with no real thought of the future generations needing housing and expansion and all that. And she thinks she did a good thing because she kept things the way she likes it, which benefits her the best.
Just think about it. When it came to voting for certain infrastructure promises that these people had made, when it came to voting whether or not to let these people go ahead and do something that they said they were going to do, they just, the vote was, no, we don't want it.
So you used the power of the state to prevent people from building things in your town?
In infrastructure. The infrastructure is now crumbling, and she's bragging that she stopped infrastructure from being built. I mean, woo.
The power of the state.
Yeah. Didn't the state then forbid to give them a license, or did you give them the permission to do what they wanted to do?
They wanted to completely change the nature of this little town against the wishes of the people that lived there.
No. If it was against the wishes of the people who lived there, then no one would sell them the land to do it. No one would patronize the businesses that they built, and nothing would change.
That's exactly what happened. They didn't sell.
So you organized a boycott, but you said voting. Voting indicates a mechanism of state power. Now, if you're using the power of the state to violate property rights, you're part of the problem, not the solution, right?
Well, state power. It was a consensus among individuals who lived in this little town.
And the consensus, if
other boomers. So you got together with the other boomers and decided no infrastructure, no expansion, no anything, just for ourselves. And now society is suffering because of it, and you don't want to have to take responsibility for that.
If there was a consensus, then nobody would build there because nobody would patronize them and nobody would sell them any land to do so. And nobody would work there.
And that's how it worked. They simply could not do business there.
Well, then what did voting have to do with anything?
It was voting amongst individuals within the community to decide on certain strategies of selling or not selling to these people.
Oh, so voting had nothing to do with the state?
It wasn't a state-run vote. It was a consensus agreement between the people of the town. Anyway,
I don't know about any of this. It sounds to me like you all voted to violate property rights, but that's neither here nor there. So you did something that you cared about your town.
They didn't own
anything. Right, you hang on. You cared about your town. You didn't want your town to change, right?
Right.
Now, did America change from when the boomers first gained power as adults until more recently?
Well, change.
The whole town called the West has irreversibly changed.
Everything is changing all the time. So
Well, no, not according to the way you wanted your
Yeah,
town
not-
to stay the same. Do you
Yeah, exactly. Not according to you.
think that the next generation kind of wanted to inherit the same freedoms that you guys benefited from when you were younger?
well, that's what we were insisting on. We were insisting on our freedom to choose the way we wanted to live. You know, sometimes it's just on a smaller scale, Stefan, but you know, it is about caring. It is about stepping up to the plate. Sometimes it's just different than being a podcaster. You know, I mean, I know
It still seems to me like you just barred people from wanting to build stuff because you didn't want the town to change.
Right. Exactly.
Well, the changes were not desirable.
Right, and the changes in the West were not desirable. Welfare state, massive government programs, affirmative action, demographic change, national debts, unfunded liabilities, crappy schools. Come on. You guys didn't grow up with any of that stuff.
Well,
And you handed it to the next generation, collectively.
Yep.
You did not defend the freedoms that gave you all of the opportunities in the known universe.
You destroyed all the infrastructure, and then you didn't fund new infrastructure because you liked the way your little town already was, and you had with no forethought for how this is going to affect the future generations.
You were handed the glorious gift of a post-Second World War, largely liberal, relatively low tax, relatively free economy, relatively small government, relatively low debt, very few unfunded liabilities. And what you handed to the next generation was the exact opposite. And you're saying, but it's okay. I traded eggs for lawn mowing, so I did my part.
Right.
No, what I'm saying is when you're referring to you're referring to a demographic, an age set that I happened to be born into. Didn't have any choice in the matter. I was lucky. I had
Well, who were you voting with? That's his whole point.
parents that really cared for me. And they endeavored to give me everything that I needed to thrive. I can't be blamed for that. And I wanted to provide the same thing for my children. And I would say that it's a natural thing for people to want to provide a good life for their kids.
So why didn't the boomers as a whole fight tooth and nail against the national debt? Why were they so greedy for more and more government programs? And why were they so comfortable with underfunded Social Security and old age pensions, which is now preying? It's like an anvil around the neck of the young. Why are they giving up their pensions saying, well, we didn't pay in enough? Why are they so happy to have all these unfunded liabilities? Why aren't they saying, no, we can't really go for health care. We certainly don't want Obamacare and all that kind of stuff because we didn't pay enough into it. We weren't responsible. We created a massive national debt, and therefore we need to make sacrifices because it sure as hell wasn't the young who were responsible for all of that.
Right. They gave themselves these lifetime pensions that you are paying these boomers until the day they die and giving them medical benefits. I mean, that's where a large portion of these funds go towards. They go towards these pension funds, which the boomers then borrow against, and they keep borrowing again. They keep borrowing from Social Security to fund their pensions, not paying back Social Security. So by the time Gen X and the other generations get to be the time where they're collecting, so it's completely insolvent because all the money went to their pensions for themselves.
I totally agree with you. I've been ranting like this for years.
So you agree with me about the boomers who don't listen to do that and make those sacrifices?
Well, I don't care what demographic they come from. I just don't like those kinds of forces in the world. I don't like
Wait, what do you mean you don't care what demographic they come from?
It doesn't matter to me what demographic it comes from. I think this crap has been happening
Of course not, because it was your generation that did it.
way, way, way further back than the 1950s. This crap has been happening all over the world.
Okay, who presided over the massive growth of the national debt and the welfare warfare state, the unfunded liabilities, the unfunded pensions, the crappy expansion of state power into the healthcare system, and the complete crapification of government schools? Who presided over that? Which generation?
Exactly.
I think the generation term is not helpful. Why is it helpful to you?
Well, no, we already went through this, right? Do you remember what I said? That the boomers who were born in the baby boom after the Second World War were one of the most sharply defined generations that ever existed in human history. So when you have a sharply defined category, it's not unreasonable to talk about that category.
Right.
Right.
And you find it helpful to blame. Like it's
Well, what do you want? Like, what do you want to blame? You did it. It's not a matter of blame. It's just a matter of fact that your generation did it. You gave yourselves all these pensions and all these monies and all these goodies. Okay, refused to fund infrastructure. Ruin the schools, like ruin society, pump the military-industrial complex, Pump the big pharma. Like, what do you want? They just don't want you to talk about it. Forgive and forget. Forgive and forget. Don't talk about that. Well, you can't fix it unless you identify what the problem is. And these boomers don't want to accept that they were the problem. That their whole mentality of thinking, by and large, as a group, was destructive. They can't handle it. And again, if you're not the type of boomer, I'm not talking to you. But as a whole, your generation did this. It's a matter of fact.
Now, the word blame is used when people don't like the word responsibility.
Exactly.
Right. And it's
right? Blame is one of these emotional, and frankly, Teresa, it's a girl term.
Okay.
It's like bashing.
What about
you're just bashing the boomers, or you blame the boomers. It's like, no. You guys voted. You had power.
Let's try a different word.
They still have power. The boomers still have the majority of power in this country. It's crazy. They're dying in office. You got octogenarians. You got 90-year-old senators dying in office. They're wheeling them in there, and because they won't give up power. You got Mitch McConnell like just blanking out. He did it like 4 or 5 times. The president of the United States is constantly just wanders around. He gets lost on stage. He keeps tripping upstairs, downstairs. He gets lost. He falls off stages. He can't speak a coherent sentence. Zero responsibility for this.
How about victims?
Do I hold people responsible for their adult choices? Hell yeah. Because the boomers sure as hell held me responsible for decisions I made as a child. Oh, you didn't study for your test? Well, you get an F.
Yep.
Oh, you didn't show up for school on the day of the test? Oh, you get an F. Oh, you disobeyed the principal? You get detention. Oh, you disobeyed the boomer? You get caned.
Yeah. Yep, your boomer teacher. Oh, what? I can't follow a lesson plan. I can't teach properly. Here's 4 hours of homework for you to take home after you've been sitting in school for 6.5, 7 hours. Ugh. Homework was one of those things, and to this day, I am anti-homework. If you can't teach a child to learn in 6.5 to 7 hours a day, that you got to send them now home with more work to do, you're not doing your fucking job. I'm sorry. That's just how I feel about it. I'm sorry. Ugh.
I was held accountable as a child by the boomer generation.
Yeah.
And now as an adult, I'm turning around and saying to the boomer generation, you're accountable, and now I'm full of bias and prejudice, and I'm blaming people. Come on.
I got all that too when I was in school.
Right.
And it wasn't
so you have exactly the right, if you got all of that in school, Teresa, you have exactly the right to hold those who did it to you accountable for their adult choices. If you are attacked physically for mistakes you make as a child, then surely people who made terrible mistakes as adults can be held accountable.
And surely once we become adults, we need to take responsibility for our own decisions in our life.
But she's not. But you're not. You're not taking responsibility. You're not. They never do.
That's what I'm talking about with boomers.
We agree on that one.
So the boomers did not fund all the goodies they wanted. Should the boomers get the goodies that they want? Should the young be forced to pay for the political programs the boomers wanted?
Hell no.
Okay, well then we're in agreement.
Yeah,
do you think many boomers would agree? See, the boomers, well, the elder generation, is often comfortable sending the young off to war. What about when the young turn to the old and say, well, you failed to fight the necessary battles to keep...
Right. Is the average boomer going to go along with that? Hell no. They're still screaming about Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and their pensions and all this. It's me. It's always going to be the me generation.
The state's small, so we are not going to be held responsible for the promises that you wrung out of governments by voting for people who wanted bigger and bigger government and more spending. You try cutting back on a social program that affects the boomers, what happens?
Meltdown.
You try cutting... Look, imagine.
Meltdown.
Imagine this. Imagine being a politician and saying something like this. The young should not be held accountable for the political decisions grown adults made with easy access to libraries. The young should not be sold into serfdom, into virtual enslavement, in terms of national debts and unfunded liabilities. The young are not responsible, since they weren't even born when these political decisions were made. The young should not be held accountable for the decisions that grown-ass adult voters made.
Yep.
And therefore, since the boomers chose not to fund the programs that they wanted, since the boomers chose to kick the can down the road, since the boomers acted with full economic knowledge of this underfunding. If the boomers refused to pay for that which was promised to them, the young should not be held accountable for the boomers' self-delusions. Therefore, the boomers need to make sacrifices, and they need to recognize that it is unjust and wrong to prey upon the young who weren't even born when these decisions were made. So I'm going to cut back and claw back benefits to the boomers. How long do you think that politician's career would last?
5 minutes.
Well, it wouldn't last very long. We're both on the same page as far as the state goes.
So what are we talking about then? Then what are we talking about?
I don't want anybody telling me how I should live my life. I'm not, I don't think that the state, whether they were boomers, Clinton was the first boomer president, right? He's the guy that
He was not the first president that the boomers voted for God's sakes.
Right.
No, but he was the first boomer president. He
wasn't. The first boomer president occurred when the boomers started to vote. At least that's when they first began to have an influence on politics.
Oh, yeah.
And that was in the early to mid-60s.
Yeah, well, I'm not American, so I never voted for Clinton anyway. But my point was that Clinton, the first boomer president, he was the one that broke into the pension funds and spent it all. The pensions that people had been paying into. That's why that money isn't there. It was...
Right. And did the boomers try to stop him? No, they applauded him. Give me more, give me more, give me more. They didn't try to stop him. They didn't vote him out. He got reelected. He got reelected in a landslide after he did that.
Bent to balance the books, to make him look better.
And
even Clinton getting a fucking blowjob in the goddamn Oval Office from a 21-year-old intern, that wasn't enough to make other boomers turn on Bill Clinton. He won in a fucking landslide.
Did the boomers vote him out and vote in somebody who was libertarian?
Thank you.
Yeah, if you...
No, they didn't.
That the state can make decisions for you, and the state can make decisions for society, then, you're going to keep trying, keep voting harder, because maybe you'll hit it. Eventually, you'll find somebody that can tell you what to do properly. I don't have any faith in voting in politicians. I really don't have any faith in them. So far, they've shown me no reason to believe in what they do or decide for me.
Yeah, but your generation voted them in. And then they spent the last 40 years destroying society, raiding the pension funds, raiding Social Security, raiding retirement, giving power to the military-industrial complex, starting foreign fucking wars. Thousands of young, where they're sending younger generations off to fight their wars. In the meantime, all the infrastructure is crumbling. They won't fund new infrastructure. The only thing they fund is what's going to line their own pockets.
I only follow the laws that I have to follow. And that's the way it is.
Do you know how many times, Teresa, you use the word I, me, my town, I do this, I self-actualize, me.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all about you, not
bet.
about society as a whole.
You bet. This is my life. And
You bet. Well, she falls into the same category as these other boomers. It's all about her. The fact that she doesn't want the social programs is meaningless. She still lives a completely selfish and self-centered life.
You're having your life, and this show is all about you. We all...
This show is all about me?
Yeah, you bet. This is your show.
I think that...
Because she sees him, because he's popular and he has an audience, that makes it about him. But he's not talking about himself. He's talking about societal problems, much like me. I incorporate my own life to validate other people's stories, but this channel isn't about me. It's about helping society. It's about helping other generations as a whole. It isn't about me.
That's what they call projection, Teresa.
Okay, cool.
That's what they.
But do you mean I'm the only self-realized person in this room?
No. You
they don't get it. They don't get it. Most of them, they don't get it, because this is how they've been raised since birth, since McCarthyism. This is how they were raised. It's all about them. They can't visualize. They can't conceptualize that they destroyed society. And they benefited off of it. They can't handle it. They can't take their medicine. They can't.
Spoke. You don't mean self-realized, you mean selfish. Because it's all about you.
Right.
I don't mind being selfish.
I know you don't mind being selfish. That's my whole point.
Exactly.
Remember-
Exactly.
Ayn Rand. She said serving.
Oh, are you saying the boomers are big fans of tiny government, of libertarianism, of objectivism? Trust me, I've talked to boomers my whole life. You bring up Ayn Rand, you do not get. It's like they read the title of the book, The Virtue of Selfishness, and then just said...
And there's plenty of boomers that are libertarians, that have a more of a libertarian viewpoint, are into Ayn Rand, but it's not a majority of them. Sure as shit ain't a majority of them.
Oh, well, then it can all be about me.
Well, the thing is, there were so many boomers that there's so many different kinds of boomers. I live in this little town. It's a really little town. There's 150 households here, and a large majority of them are in their 60s. So we're kind of like a boomer town here. And you know, the people that are living here, they're all hardworking individuals. You ask them how they got to where they are. They all had, you know, hard jobs. Every one of them. They weren't welfare bums. And they really didn't like what was happening with the state. Most of them individual.
But what did they do to stop it? Other than stop expansion in their own town and stop infrastructure in their own town. They did nothing to benefit the future. What they did was self-preservation.
Country people. So there's a whole other section of boomers that you're missing here.
Yeah, but you ain't one of them. Because you said you're very happy and proud to be selfish and that it's all about you.
Right.
Well,
exactly.
Selfish.
Yeah.
Self-realized.
No, I said selfish and you said you were fine with that term. So don't stop weaseling out with me with this self-actualized crap now, right?
Yeah, well, it's okay. You can use whatever term you want to.
You used her term. It wasn't his term, it was her term. Holy shit. Holy shit.
No, I'm using the term you agreed to.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Whatever.
And now we have the whatever, which is you don't like what I'm saying, so you're disengaging. And this is the frustrating thing. Boomers can't be corrected because they can just disengage whenever they don't like where a conversation is going. Boomers don't like subjecting themselves to any larger rules or responsibilities. They're for themselves and for their family. And, you know, you did a good job with your kids, I'm sure, and that's fantastic. But as far as larger society goes, they've just got their noses in the trough, and they will growl and snarl and claw at anyone who tries to get between them and their unjust gains. And that is my problem. And you've done nothing to change my view of boomers. In fact, I'm afraid it's more reinforced now than before our conversation. That having been said, I really do appreciate the conversation. I think it was very illuminating, but I will move on to the next caller. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Bye-bye.
And that, as they say, is that. Like, they don't realize it. Like, because they've lived their whole lives in this it's all about me type of mentality. And they don't even realize it until they start talking. And then when they start talking, they're constantly trying to move the goalposts. I mean, and that's where the boomers are now. The boomers in 2023, modern day boomers, their main goal is to constantly be moving the goalpost. Why? So they don't have to accept any accountability for the destruction that the majority of their generation has caused. So, in case any of you are wondering, I played this at 1.25 speed, so it would go faster, and it seems like it worked pretty well. It made it flow a little much quicker, which is better for me, better for the boys. I think it's better for everybody watching. So, unreal. I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you, Chris, for the contribution and the audio. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with either the Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, and email links in the description box below. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. Also, be sure to subscribe to both my Rumble channels. Follow me on Twitter and Telegram as well. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been Societal Narcissism. Take care, everyone.